been a few weeks since I showed the first preview of the offline debugger for Illuminated Cloud. In that time, I've pretty much gotten into a completed state and plan to release it soon. Wanted to put together a new video that shows some of the features I've added to it, and specifically how you interact with it. So let's start by looking at how you would launch it, for example, for a unit test. So I'm just going to right click and say debug. It's going to go launch that unit test, run it, and when it's completed, of course, this is an offline debugger, not an interactive debugger, so this is being keyed off of information in logs and things like heap dumps from checkpoints. We're now debugging. So I'll step over this line and you can see that the console was updated with the log entries that corresponded to the line that I just stepped over. Most of the time you're going to want to stay in the variables view, as that's the more traditional debugger view. So let's look at how that works. As in the previous video, if I step in, step over, I can go up and down the stack frame here as I showed. Here I can see that this value is just set. That system debug, flipping back over to the console view for a moment, is actually displayed as the content output in addition to the log entry. Flipping back over to the debug view for variables view, look at some other capabilities. So I can step into complex property accessors. So I'll step into this. We can actually watch as the variable set. Notice that that's in blue. Basically the changes since the last execution, as you step over, step in, things like that, run to cursor, those types of things are displayed prominently, so you can see what's happened. Again, stepping into a more complex getter. I've put quite a bit of effort into trying to format the information that comes back. It comes back in a variety of forms into a usable variables view. There are times that I can't. It's just malformed, but I try as hard as possible to show it. So, for example, here's a some collections. There's a list, a set. A map made up of key value pairs. Going into flow control, one thing that you will see is that the information that comes back does seem to have a difference in terms of braces into line versus next line, in terms of the lines that are reported. I tried to correct for this, and I ended up missing some log entries. I may work on that, but for right now, if you use next line, you'll see this type of behavior. So we can watch I here. The value for I actually change as we go through. I don't want to go through all that, so I'm going to go down here and use the feature that is basically run to cursor. So I'm going to run to cursor to get down to here. We'll look at what happens with flow control with things like exception handling. So I'm going to force an exception by trying to dereference a null value, and we end up here in the exception block, and you can see the exception. And I'm going to go ahead and let it continue from there. All right, so you can see that it went through everything here, including the output. Now let's look at what happens if we go and set some checkpoints. So we'll set a checkpoint here before we have our collections. We'll set a checkpoint, say here, where we're about to force an exception, and then one here. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and debug again. And in fact, on this one, let's go ahead and add a query to it, and we'll say select ID, name from account. And in fact, let's go ahead and add a subrelation join, select name, owner dot username from contacts. All right, and that'll be good. All right, and so I'm going to go ahead and run the debugger again. And when the test finishes, now what I'm going to do is just allow it to run, and we'll go ahead and move back over here. But I'm going to allow it to run until the first checkpoint. Now we can see down here that it reached that checkpoint. We got a heap dump, no SQL query, no anonymous Apex. But what you can see is address information here. So there's a little bit richer information that comes back when you get a heap dump. We'll let it run to the next one. And this one says that there was a SQL query. Now you'll notice over here that it says query results. And so we can go and expand that. It shows us the actual query, and we can browse around in the query results. Contacts, multiple contacts here. So we can look at the information. Now, of course, you're bound to the limitations of what type of queries, what types of anonymous Apex are allowed in what context, just by what Salesforce allows. And then we'll go ahead and run to the next checkpoint, and we got a heap dump there, and we can see the exception again. So let's look at another way that we can go and execute this from anonymous Apex. And so here I've got an anonymous Apex script, and I will go ahead and debug this. And so it went and ran that. Notice that my anonymous Apex script is now available up here. I'm going to go ahead and step over. Now this is a good example of where I can't correct formatting. You see these ellipses and things like that, 11 more. Without me going and making assumptions that might be just wrong, I really can't parse that, so what I'm doing is just showing the original value. And similar here, as I step over this, the loop variable is just a portion of that. What would be interesting here is to show you can also step into, I have a trigger registered on shopping list, that S object. And so if I step in, I'm inside of that trigger because I'm running a DML operation on it. And so you can actually step into kind of adjacent logic like trigger logic very easily just by stepping into the DML operation. And then that anonymous apex is complete. And then the last way that I wanted to show to be able to do this is let's go ahead and bring up a browser window that has a Visualforce page in it. And I'm going to go to the log viewer. Now I can set log levels here very easily in all these views. I can go and set the log levels to some predefined. So full debugging is going to have all variable assignments. That's what you've been seeing so far. This can end up resulting in maximum debug log size issues. You can have a middle ground where we don't have variable assignments, but we do have stepping so that you can actually see the code flow. Again, reasonable chance on large transactions, large requests that you're going to hit that issue with maximum log size reached. And then checkpoints only. So let's try doing it with full debugging first. We'll go ahead and refresh here. Okay, we'll go back over to our browser view, and I'm just going to refresh this window. Okay, let's go back over to here and refresh, and we have shopping list mobile view, and we can see here, turns out everything's fine. So let's go ahead and debug this. All right, so it now has us inside the controller, and so I can begin stepping over inside the controller of the page that was just rendered and watch things happen. Okay, and so we can see, again, shopping list came back looking like that, and if we expand some of this out, we can see some pretty friendly information where it's available and where not. You see the kind of the raw result. So let's go ahead and run that. All right, so let's do this. Let's set some checkpoints here, and we'll go ahead and rerun that. So those checkpoints were set. We'll go over here and refresh. We'll go back to the log viewer, get the latest log, and we can see here that let's use the filtering capability. We can see that we ended up with a heap dump. Because of the branching logic up there, that's why we only ended up with one heap dump. So let's go ahead and debug this log. Okay, and let's have it run to the heap dump. And there we are at the heap dump, showed that the heap dump was loaded. Let's see if we got a little bit better information this time. That looks much, much, much better. So it's a good way to fill in information when the assignments that are happening in the log don't yield very good information. This is especially helpful if you have a transaction that results in exceeding the maximum debug log size. So let's take a look at that. Let's go back over to the log viewer, and we'll select checkpoints only. Okay, that was just set in the server. I'm going to go refresh this. I'll come back over here and refresh the log, and we end up with a considerably smaller log. What, a sixth the size, less than that. And we'll go ahead and execute that. Now notice that there is a heap dump in here. So we'll go ahead and execute this guy, and it stopped at that heap dump. It went ahead and loaded it, and we'll go over here and we can see that information. And I can set up to 5 heap dumps per running transaction. So this gives me the ability, while I can't explicitly step through the code line by line, I can certainly view the state at some key points on these long-running transactions and still debug them effectively. So this gives you an idea of some of the functionality of the debugger. Your mileage may vary. This is a complex tool, trying to digest information that frankly is not coming back in a completely consistent form. My guess is I'm going to have to fix some bugs. So I'll be interested to hear people's experiences, and certainly feel free to tell me about situations where things aren't behaving as expected. I will certainly try to resolve them to the best of my abilities based on the information that's available to me. Thanks much, and be on the lookout for this in the next few days, I would say within the week. Thanks.